What up, y'all? Well, it's been a fucking rough week for me, man. I had COVID splash back on me a couple days ago, and then been testing negative since, but yeah, my system is very shell-shocked, and I haven't been able to take any long-lasting psychedelics, which has like really plunged me right into depression, and it shows just like how crucial those are in treating it. Because I got about 3 days of at the very least feeling normal after a macrodose of a long-lasting psychedelic. But being, or at least liking to think that I'm a responsible user of psychedelics, I know that when my immune system is down, and also because I have a weird metabolism, that ingesting a psychedelic orally is very unpredictable. Like when my immune system was fully compromised, I got the flu shot, for example, and it basically gave me the flu. And I took a microdose of 0.2 of mushrooms, and it was like I was on a couple grams. So I just have been consuming the psychedelics, which I know because of the ROA, that route of administration, that the results are going to be the same regardless of how I feel. Set for mindset. Mindset is a big part, that's for sure. So I've only been using a DMT cart. Ketamine, definitely more sparingly now, as I was using a lot when I was sick. And it's an expensive habit. I'm trying to back off a little bit. It's also, as I said, it was doing some damage to my bladder, but that seems to have gotten better. And ketamine helps some people with depression, but unfortunately not me. It does seem to increase activity in the hippocampus like traditional psychedelics, so theoretically it should help with depression, but for me, nowhere near as much as actual psychedelics. But I finally broke through on a DMT cart. Like, I got to the bottom, like I've got a quarter of the cart left, maybe, and I think it's because, I wasn't shaking it, so I was just getting these weak, sort of diluted hits, and now I'm getting, like, really concentrated hits, but, I attached a tube to it because I know that makes, it makes it much stronger. You get bigger hits. It cools down the smoke a bit, or the vapor a bit more, so it's not as harsh on the lungs. But I fired up like 4 or 5 really good hits, because I find you've got to get those hits within a minute, or your tolerance goes up and it will just do nothing. The cart is very, all experiences I've had with carts, and I know it's DMT because I know the DMT it's made with. I've tried the DMT it's made with. I know who makes them. I'm good friends with the guy. I'm not going to name drop for obvious reasons, it's like usually when I do DMT, I get propelled into a very colorful place. There's just a myriad of colors, more than I can count, but with the cart, it's mostly just red and green, like bright neon green, but mostly red, which is interesting. Actually, it starts with yellow, usually yellow, kind of spider web like patterns, I find. I had 2 very interesting experiences. One was the full breakthrough, which I'll tell you about first, and the next was very close, and they actually reminded me more of 4-ACO DMT experiences I've had. I've tried freebase 4-ACO DMT, which I would not recommend personally. I can order it legally, but it's like black tar heroin in terms of the consistency, and you have to keep it in a freezer or it'll melt. Like, I remember once an order turned into just like oil that was just completely unusable. Wouldn't freeze again within the span of the less than 24 hours it took a Purelator truck to bring it to my house. And it's also just, it makes a mess of my pipe. And it's very similar to DMT, but it's weird. It's like I can see the entities, I can see them like talking, but I can't actually, it's like a one-sided thing. I can't hear it, I can't experience it. And my experiences with the cart reminded me more of that than regular NN DMT. But again, I know the cart is NN DMT. I know that, again, I tried the DMT it's made with, and again, 4-ACO DMT freebase is like very precarious. Like, it would have spoiled if I left it just sitting in my room the way I have. But onto my breakthrough. So this was interesting because as I stated before, I don't see the entities that people typically describe, because I want my experiences to be, wholly pure, as pure as they can get, and far away from, what other people have described. As I believe I stated the first time I had a real heavy breakthrough that I didn't black out for. I was seeing gestures, like, they're literally like copy and paste gestures dancing in and out of each other. And middle fingers floating by, disembodied middle fingers that are very cartoonish. But I was just listening to Joe Rogan talk about DMT before I did it, so I think that influenced what I saw. But usually when I encounter entities, they are non-corporeal, they're not anthropomorphic, and what that means is, they typically are very, like, it's so hard to explain these things. Like, they might have a face or something like that, but they're usually made of, like, sort of abstruse, like, matter that seems to have no basis in what we come to know in mythology and, archetypes and forms. Like, they seem very formless and transformative. I mean, like, yes, I saw like a neon leprechaun once on Changa, and dancing go-go girls, but that was very rare. Like, one of the breakthroughs I had, for example, the entity was like a big purple blob, and it was like turning into these kind of flowery, geometric floral sort of arrangements. But with this one, I actually saw entities that they looked like heads with crowns on them. Not jester hats or anything, with crowns. Like, they were like male heads with crowns, and they would kind of plot, like, just sort of form out of the red and then sort of go back in. And I could see out of the corner of my vision a big humanoid shape, and it reached out, and it was kind of like holding my heart. And as it was doing that, like, this neon green was sort of shooting in front of my face. Unfortunately, I didn't really get to have a dialogue with them. I tried, but I couldn't, which is why I'm comparing it to 4-ACO DMT freebase. But it was very cool nonetheless. And I also, the day before that, had a very powerful experience that I don't know if it was a full breakthrough. Usually when there's a full-on breakthrough, but it was hard to tell with this one as I had my blindfold on the whole time. But I saw, like what I just described with the humanoid shape out of the corner of my vision, there was a dude I could see from kind of the neck down to his torso, and it was like he was spinning things into existence from the top of my vision. He kind of reminded me of the big robot thing in what's that sci-fi movie? It was remade with Keanu Reeves, where an alien comes to planet Earth and is trying to help people, like the day the world stood still. That's it. Yeah, it kind of looked like that. So not really many features, but it had a form that was consistent and anthropomorphic in nature. Yeah, no, it's cool to finally actually have some success with the carts. And one thing I've learned is that I probably shouldn't take ketamine when I do it. Like, I usually do take a slightly lower dose of ketamine than I usually do, so I'm not fully anesthetized when I do DMT, but I find I forget so much more of the experience if I do that. So I'm hello, I'm trying not to, but it makes it so much easier to break through, because when you're on a like just sub-anesthetic dose of ketamine, you're already almost out of your body. So the DMT just like really pushes you out. Yeah, no, that was very cool. But I also want to touch on another aspect of the breakthrough. So, you know, I was talking about tolerance and how you kind of have to get it all in 1 minute, or your tolerance goes up and then you got to wait an hour to do it again if you want to get any effects. Well, I got to the, like, past the peak of this trip, and I did 3 more hits. And it was like, again, I didn't talk to the entities. There's no exchange, but I had a very powerful sense of being admonished, like, tisk, tisk, you shouldn't have done that. You're just wasting your DMT. But it did, actually, because there were 3 big hits I took. Sorry, I'm just going under an overpass. It's a little noisy. My apologies, I would take a quieter route if there was one available to me right now. But anyways, yeah, like, it kicked me right back into the peak, but instead of ascending, which I usually go up when I do DMT, I went down, and now I've heard people describe DMT hell, and it's not something I ever really experienced myself. I've had just, you know, mostly positive experiences with DMT. I've had some that were scary and that they were very intense, but still intriguing, and worth the intensity and the ego death. But there's this concept in psychedelics that's unfortunately not touched upon very often by people, that's referred to as unspeakable horrors. And as the name suggests, it refers to seeing things that are just too gruesome to even relay. Now, what I experienced with the DMT wasn't quite that bad, and it was probably because I was listening to a lot of audio recordings of Thomas Ligotti stories, which, by the way, he right now is my favorite author at the moment. He writes the most like poetically gruesome and fucked up stories I think I've read, and I love it. And I was listening to, I believe it's called the Nightmare Network, and it's a really I'm well versed in horror. Like, ever since I saw Aliens, Natural Born Killers when I was like 6, I loved horror, but I found it very hard to actually get scared by it. And the Nightmare Network was fucking terrifying. Fuck. And very grotesque. Like, shockingly so, but so well articulated, and like Ligotti really does a great job of setting up his stories. And he does the short story format so well. I actually have his nonfiction book I'm reading right now, and we'll do a review on, because it's one of the best things I've ever read. I mean, maybe best is the wrong word, because it's full of a lot of pessimistic, like seriously pessimistic views, like, you know, these ideas such as consciousness being a bad thing, and how consciousness was like an accident on nature's behalf that ended up causing us to live these lives that are full of suffering. And, you know, there's various means of escape that we use. He's constantly referencing this very obscure Dutch philosopher, Peter Waffle Zapfa. I may be pronouncing that wrong. I believe he's Icelandic, sorry, not Dutch. But you know, it talks about ideas such as like how people deal with being a sentient being, or how they cope with it, such as isolation, distraction, sublimation, which means, you know, or anchoring, which is like to, you know, invest yourself in a belief such as a religious one. And Ligotti has some very, very great lines about religion that are some of the best I've ever heard. They're so, like, you know, disparaging, but in like the best way possible, you know. Yeah, anyway, I mean, I will do a book review of that, but yeah, he has a lot of very interesting ideas, like the fact that not the facts, he says these are all opinions in the book. He says that we're puppets. We're puppets in terms of the fact that we are not truly autonomous beings, that our agency is actually an illusion, and that we are puppets to our genetic programming and our, you know, conditioning throughout life that has led us to believe certain things and not believe others. But I think it was because I was listening to Nightmare Network before this, and I was also watching Alter Short Horror Films, which is a great YouTube channel, kind of like Omeletto or Dust, but for horror, and like really disturbing horror. Some of them are just terrible, but there are some fucking gems, like some of the best horror I've seen in a long time. So I think that influenced the content of what I saw at the end of this breakthrough. Yeah, like what I saw were like cages, and they were cages that were full of like blood and guts, and blood and guts were kind of falling down. But I actually don't consider it a negative, because I am like looking for inspiration on various stories, and, you know, even though I think gore is typically misused in horror, like typically like Eli Roth type stuff, for example, is based around gore. Like, you know, it doesn't rely on good characters, and I don't mean good in the fact that they're like, you know, ethically sound characters, but, you know, just not well written, not characters you at all want to invest in, or a good narrative structure. It's essentially just, you know, shock factor with gore. But Thomas Ligotti, like, his short stories are the pinnacle of examples of how to use gore, like, in a way that makes sense and that is earned. Like, one short story I read by him was called Drink to Me Only with Labyrinthine Eyes. And it's not gory until the end. But, so, like, it builds up to the gore. it earns it. The Nightmare Network, on the other hand, is gory all the way through and kind of gets worse and worse. But it works because of, well, I mean, there's several elements, but because these are short stories, I don't want to say too much and spoil them for you. You can find all of these in audiobook formats on YouTube. Highly, highly recommend them. And when I finish The Conspiracy Against the Human Race, I'll do a book review on it. But I would recommend this book if you are inclined to pessimism, but if you are also inclined towards suicidal tendencies, I really wouldn't, because he espouses suicide as being like the most noble way of, defying this existence that we never asked for, but we're given anyways. And now this may sound at odds with what most psychonauts say, but I'm not most psychonauts. I don't like most psychonauts. I may like them as people, but their outlook just oftentimes pisses me off. Like, I find it usually very conceited and full of just allusions that border on delusions, like enlightenment and so forth. I'm on this level up here above all of you, and you'll never understand what I understand, sort of thing. It's very conceited in that regard. So I tend to be kind of a lone tripper. Anyways, I trip with very different intentions in mind than most people. I utilize setting intentions, a lot of things that are recommended to be done with psychedelics that I recommend you do when you do psychedelics, but I reach very different conclusions than most people when it comes to the revelations that I have on them. And some people think I'm cynical, but and that's probably true, but that cynicism is kind of part and parcel with pessimism, but not cynicism in a way that's just like negative for the sake of being negative. It's cynical in that I have kind of come to understand that most things we regard as true are based on the foundation of lies. And I'm going to make another video talking about the silver lining to feeling pretty much worse than I ever have for the last month, because I came to a revelation about an ambition that I want to pursue in my life, and I won't get into it too much here, but I'll make a separate video on that. I'll say this much: it has to do with exposing how, specifically America and the West are, just these complete crux of capitalistic shit that exists on a structure of systems meant only to benefit the greedy, the evil, the rich. And by evil, I don't mean the fucking devil or whatever. I mean evil is in their malevolence, and they don't give a fuck about anyone but themselves. And I would like to pursue that, because the other author I've been reading is William Blum, who wrote Killing Hope, which details pretty much all the CIA covert operations post-World War II, since they're, basically their formation, to, I believe, the 80s. A lot of very fascinating stuff in there. And he also wrote Rogue State, America, the World's Only Superpower, which was famously recommended to Americans by Osama bin Laden. And this got him a lot of controversy for obvious reasons. But hey, Osama bin Laden is a result of the CIA. They funded him and Al-Qaeda to fight the Russians in the first Gulf War. If it wasn't for that, he probably would have never had the means and without the American military, persecuting, the people in the Middle East for the purpose of making sure they get those precious fossil fuels, sending young people to die in the process under this illusion of it, volunteering and being a soldier independently. I could see why that would make him an extremist. That would militarize them. But it's funny, William Blum's his response to this is fucking classic. Like, he was like, and I'm paraphrasing here because I can never remember things word for word, verbatim. That's the word for word. But he said something along the lines of, my book sales have gone through the roof since this, and this is almost as good as having my book featured on Oprah's book club. He was a very interesting guy. He died a while ago at the ripe old age of 88. No, I don't think he was killed by the government. He was 88. He died of natural causes. But he actually worked in, I believe, some sect of the U.S. government, not Secret Service, but something like that. And he became disillusioned after the Vietnam War. Another thing based on a fucking house of lies. It was all part and parcel with this push against the domino effect of communism. You can't have a market other than capitalism. And well, yes, Stalin era communism and all that, Russia ever since is China, Mao. These are all examples of overt evil, whereas in the West, I think we have an evil that is almost measured in its extremities and its deplorable nature, but it is much more in the shadows, under the cloak or guise of something else. So most people don't know about these things. But anyways, these are subjects for other videos, and I don't want to get too much into them, but I do want to talk about them. Let me know if you want to hear more about these subjects. Things are getting noisy again, so I will peace out, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye!